We're now going to start our final presentation in the series of Milcopex postcards, and we're very fortunate to have Joe Stransky, who is the doyen of Wisconsin postcards, to give us a talk about both the history and how you should collect postcards. So I'm going to turn this over to Joe, and I'm going to start the screen sharing. Screen. Okay, Joe, so the floor is yours.
Thank you.
If you'd like to say a few words about yourself.
Sure. I'm Joe Stransky. Some of you know me. I've been collecting for quite a while, particularly picture postcards. I was a stamp collector previous to that, but then I got fascinated by postcards. So that's become my major hobby interest. And I do want to thank Colin and Marianne Bowman and all the people at Milwaukee Philatelic Society for putting on the show and enabling me to get my talk. So let's get right into it. About 1869 in Austria, a guy developed a postal card, and this is not what you're looking at. It's obviously from France, but 1869 is an accepted date for the first postal card. But there were some things earlier than that. There was a postcard from 1861 called the Lippmann card, and that was in the United States, but there are not too many of those around. I haven't seen one myself. But anyhow, from the first slide, you can see a small postcard. It's a government postcard type, although this has an adhesive postage stamp on it. And it appears that the European countries were a little bit ahead of the United States by a few years in producing this type of card. So I won't be talking about them much in the talk. We'll mostly be talking about picture postcards. So if we go to the next slide. Okay. Now here we have advertising postal cards. And these are government postals. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen, United States postal card. This one, that particular one, postmarked probably in the late 1870s, I think. And so the government in the United States printed these cards, and then companies could take them to printing houses and have advertising put on them. As you can see on the left, there's a couple of examples. And these are still pretty abundant today, pretty easy to locate if you have any interest in collecting them. And I guess you could say they're still around today. I mean, I see a lot of examples in, like, even from the 1940s and beyond, where that's being done. So this is a case where government postal cards, and then people would have advertising printed on them. A lot of my talk is going to be about the dating of postcards, because I want to relay how to date cards by looking at the backs. Pioneer cards, generally before 1898. Private mailing cards, that was an act of Congress, United States Act of Congress, May 19th, 1898, and those cards went until 1901. And the purpose of that was to sort of allow private printing of postcards so that people wouldn't have to rely so much on the government postal cards. And one advantage to that is that the people producing the private mailing cards wouldn't have to pay the 1 cent per card, from the government. And so it reduced their cost. And also, I believe at that time, the message, so on the government postal cards, the message could only be on the face of the card, if you want to call it that, and address only on the back. Now, on the private mailing cards, the same kind of deal, you could write on the face of the card. Then undivided back postcards, a similar thing, 1901 to 1907, was where the message only was on the front, or the picture of the card and the message on the front, and the postage stamp and the address only on the back. Messages weren't allowed on the reverse of the card. Then in 1907, the regulations got loosened a little bit more. And with divided back postcards, there's a dividing line, a vertical dividing line on the reverse of the card. The left-hand side would be for the message, and the right-hand side would be for the address and the postage stamp. And then on the face of the card could be the picture. So really, the postcard hobby got quite popular around this time. So there was billions of cards postmarked. I think I read in one of the books that in Germany, somewhere like around 1905 to 1910, 1 billion postmarks per year just from Germany. So it was like a frenzy. People, it was a craze, a postcard craze. So that's something that's an interesting part of the history. So let's talk about pioneer postcards a little bit. Generally, these are before 1898. I've already showed you the government postals, which are often kind of in a separate category from the picture postcards. In the United States, the first main grouping of these was the Columbian Exposition cards of 1892 and 1893. Well, the exposition wasn't ready until 1893. There were some 1892 cards. Those are the unofficial cards, and the 1893 cards you'll see in a minute are the official cards. Oh, excuse me. I also happen to have a postcard of 1887 from Bavaria. This is an early picture postcard. It has a stamp on the back from Bavaria. And in this time frame, they mostly was monochromatic. They hadn't developed the highly colored printing techniques that you'll see in the 1890s. And then another side point I want to make, 1889, France had a universal exposition in Paris. The Eiffel Tower had just opened, and there were a few postmarks on the postcards. Not too many have survived. I feel myself fortunate to have been able to obtain this card, even though it doesn't look like it's in the best of condition. It has a postmark of the 22nd of August of 1889. The earliest postmark of that exposition is August 21st. So I think it was pretty fortunate to find this one. And they're not at all common. So here's some of the Columbian Exposition cards. Charles Goldsmith was awarded the franchise for the official cards. And as I just previously mentioned, in 1892, there was a small quantity printed, which are much harder to find, without the gold logo in the lower left corner. But this is generally the design of the Columbian cards. I think there was 10 or 12 in a set. I'm not sure about that. And you can see they were printed on the government postal cards on the back. And these are interesting, and there's quite a few different varieties of them. They come in different sizes. Some of them, this is the full-size one. There's another version where they crop down the height of it to make it easier to send through the mail, I guess. And then they also, some of them have a 1-cent Columbian stamp on them because there was a 2-cent rate going at that time. I think that was because people could write a message on the front. Now here's another unofficial postcard. This is by Kohler, and they issued a set I think that one again was 10 or 12. That's monochromatic. These are actually less common than the Goldsmith cards. On the right, looks like that could be a Kohler card, but I don't think that's definitely been shown. The colored printed cards from the Columbian Exposition that aren't the official ones. These are quite a bit scarcer, so you'll have a hard time finding any of those that look like the one on the right. Then in 1894, there was a California Midwinter Exposition. Exhibitors from Europe came to the United States to promote their goods, and it was decided by somebody that California could have an exposition. It followed the Columbian Exposition by only a few months, opened in January of 1894. Here you can see an example of one, and the back says souvenir correspondence card on the bottom two lines. The Pioneer cards often say souvenir postal card, souvenir mail card, and that's one of the ways to determine if a card is a Pioneer. Again, this exposition is a fairly scarce exposition to find. Now, for a moment, we're going to deviate and go to Germany, to the Grußhaus postcards. Germany developed some terrific printing techniques in the early 1890s, and you can see on the left, there's a Grußhaus, which means greetings from Grußhaus Fritzlar. And before 1895, let's say 1894, approximately, they were more like the monochromatic ones, where you have like a bluish background or another colored background, and then the inking is mostly in black. So you don't get to the multicolor process until around 1895. There are, however, some cards that are multicolored before 1895, but much scarcer. And then on the right-hand side, we can see one that was typically produced after 1895 into the early 1900s. This is Grußhaus Hanover, and the quality of printing is really fantastic on these. I believe the process was called chromolithography, and a number of different stones were used. Many colors were used, and the technique is pretty much not known today. It didn't survive. So, but they were very beautiful cards, can be collected easily today. And then in other countries in Europe, similar things. Hilsen fra Copenhagen, which would be greeting from Copenhagen, and Souvenir de Paris. And I think that the one on the right for sure was printed in Germany, and I suspect the one on the left one as well. Also, with the Pioneer cards, American Souvenir card, the designs were copyrighted in December of 1897. They produced 15 sets of 12 cards each, and a set of 12 cards sold for 25 cents. And one of the things that's interesting about the souvenir cards or the Pioneer cards is that these cards weren't necessarily meant to be sent. This was kind of the advent of when picture postcards were becoming popular just as a medium of, collecting. Because the people could buy the cards and then, they could show them off to their friends at night, in the parlor in their house. So there's a lot of interesting ones, and it's kind of challenging to try to put together these sets because you can only find a few of them here and there, but it is possible to assemble sets of these. Now here's another one. You can see on the back, it clearly says Souvenir Postcard, and this was of the Pacific Coast Steamship Company. Was unable to determine who the publisher of this one was. In 1898, the Trans-Mississippi Exposition made a nice set of 10 cards. They're slightly smaller than the exposition of the Columbian in size. And again, they were printed on a government postal back. Now, the private mailing cards, as I said before, they were authorized by an act of Congress in 1898, and they clearly say private mailing card. And here the sender needed to add a postage stamp in order to send it. It didn't come with the postage on the back, and no message was allowed on the address side. Here's an example of a private mailing card from Milwaukee. It says greetings from Milwaukee, and on the back, a similar card says private mailing card. And the private mailing cards always have the message about the 1898 date. Here's a couple of other examples of private mailing card backs. Some of the backs were quite ornate, and a lot of interesting graphic artwork went into them. Both of these were postmarked in 1901. Now we get to undivided back postcards, 1901 to 1907, and they don't have the dividing line on the reverse. Again, address only on the back and the message allowed on the face. So to show you an example of these, we have some cards from the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904, and these happen to be Hold the Light postcards. I don't have any to show you with me, but the one on the left is called the die cut Hold the Light, where the paper is actually cut into, and if you hold the card up to the light, you can see the windows are lit up, and maybe sometimes some other features of the card are lit up. Same with the one on the right, but it's not die cut. I'm not sure how those were made, but if you were to hold that one up to the light, the buildings would kind of glow in a more subtle fashion. Both of these cards were produced by the Couples Envelope Company. And here again, you can see on the back, no dividing line, which clearly shows that they were made before 1907. Now, divided back postcards, that started in 1907 in March. There's the vertical line, and the message allowed is on the left side of the reverse. Then I'll also be getting into some other eras of the divided back. There's the white border era, 1915 to 1930. The linen era, which is a type of paper that was used, where the linen finish shows you, it's easy to identify, and you can determine that those cards are generally from the 30s to the mid 40s. And after that, we have the chrome postcards. Sometimes we call these modern chromes. And one thing I didn't mention, I guess, was the Continentals. I'm not sure when the Continentals started, maybe in the 1950s. They're a larger size. Generally, the other cards were 3.5 high, 5.5 inches wide, and the Continentals were 4 inches high and 6 inches wide. And now some of the cards are even quite a bit larger. Here's two more exposition cards, and I wanted to show these because the one on the left is the undivided back, and the one on the right is a divided back. Jamestown Exposition was in 1907, and in 1909, the Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition. The exposition cards are a lot of fun to collect because there's a lot of interesting graphics. And on the back, you can see the top one was from the 1907. Well, that one was made as an undivided back. And below it, you can see the divided back, message on the left, postage stamp, and the address on the right. Here's an interesting card. This is a 3-panel card. So it folds twice. And so there's 3 panels of the exposition in San Francisco. And this is kind of an unusual one. Pretty hard to locate something like this, and I was fortunate to be able to obtain this card. So there's quite a lot of interesting variety in collecting the exposition cards. And then I skipped to 1939. I skipped the 1933 Chicago World's Fair. There's a plethora of those of linen cards, real photos, and printed cards. But this was kind of an unusual one from 1939. I guess we could call this a white border. But this one struck me as being rather unusual for the 1939 fair. Now I kind of want to switch gears and I want to talk about greeting cards. So I hope you've gotten a little idea of how to date the cards that I've discussed so far. Now, holiday greetings, they're collected for the various holidays, and they were celebrated, and some of the cards are quite abundant. For instance, I would say most of these can be found pretty easily. Maybe Labor Day is a little bit less common, and leap year isn't quite as common. But most of these holidays were readily produced for collectors. They can be qualified as very high quality, but also a lot of generic cards of not the greatest printing. And we'll get to look at a bunch of these in a moment. And there was a lot of artist-drawn cards where scenes of children or Santa Clauses, a variety of different topics, and by some good artists that did the work, and the quality is quite nice on some of these. A lot of these were produced in Germany and England. John Winch was a publisher, and Paul Finkenrath of Berlin. Those are both German publishers. And then Tuck was from England. And then there were some other European publishers. And of course, there was some in the United States too, but we're going to look at quite a few from Europe here. Now here to start out with, we've got a couple of New Year cards. The one on the left is a Hold the Light. If you were to hold this up to the light, the little red and blue and yellow blotches in the year date light up. And that's kind of a nice Hold the Light. And the one on the right, this is a signed artist card by Francis Brundage. I believe that was a Tuck card. And along with the other things about the New Year cards, Father Time was shown on some of them, clocks, hourglasses, a lot of themes relating to time and celebration, champagne bottles, mushrooms, pigs, elves, and coins. We're going to look at a few more of these. They're a lot of fun to collect because the artist's work is good, and let's look at a few of these. So the one on the left here, this one I just recently found looking through some of my stuff. Happy New Year shows a lady and riding on a pig and a bunch of pigs going through a field of mushrooms. I guess that the mushrooms were considered a symbol of good luck, and as well, pigs were. And on the right, there's a picture of two elves cutting a mushroom down as though it was a tree. So it kind of speaks to the time. The one on the left here, that's a John Winch card. The artist is Samuel Schmucker, famous artist who did a lot of nice artwork. You can see the pretty lady, and that's very typical of Schmucker's artwork. He drew ladies, that kind of drawing. And he's in Father Time, I guess, and a clock on the back, so the passing of the time. And then the center one shows some elves around a clock, again, the theme of bringing in the new year. And on the right, one of a child with a bag of coins, so perhaps portending a good year coming up. Now we're going to go on to Valentine's Day postcards. These are some John Winch postcards. The one on the left is actually kind of three-dimensional. If it was here, I could show you that the image, the soldier pops up out of the card. And the second one is like a booklet where you can open the page. So you can turn the page and then a message could be written behind that picture. And the one on the right, again, I believe is a Samuel Schmucker, pretty sure of that, and with a couple of hearts. So the Valentine's Day cards, there are a lot of those around. They're a lot of fun to collect, and they're pretty easy to find. So if people who collect or are interested in collecting Valentine's Day, there's a good variety to be found. Yes, sir. As far as I know, John Winch was the publisher. So the artist he's not the artist. Yeah, I can't answer that question any further than that. But Winch is the publisher. Now, one thing about the Winch cards is when you fold them over, they're, as far as I know, they're most all divided backs. And by the stamp box, it will say printed in Germany, vertically along the side of where one of the stamps goes. Okay. And if it says printed in Germany or printed in Bavaria, it's almost certainly a Winch card, because that back is a style of back that's often used on other holiday cards. Those may or may not be Winch cards, but if it says printed in Germany along the edge of the stamp box, you can be pretty sure that was John Winch that published that card. Here again, on the card on the left, St. Patrick's Day, a pig, which is, I understand, is a symbol of good luck. Now, the second card on the right looks like could be a Schmucker, could be John Winch, but it isn't. And the printing quality isn't quite as good. And it's also doesn't have the same level of embossing. So that was, it shows that back then people would pirate designs. So even back, around 1915, it was pirating of, art property like that. Here's another Winch one. This one, the picture in the middle is a picture of Ireland, and the center, the vignette, is silk. So some of the Winch cards are actually printed on silk. And a lot of people don't know that that actually is silk, but those are worth a premium. And if you find these digging through a box of cards, the silk ones are worth a premium, but they can also be found as a surprise. The seller might not know that that's a silk postcard, but you can feel the silk cloth. And they're very pretty cards, very nicely produced, they're very high quality. Let's move on to Easter. I didn't put a lot of cards in here because I have a lot of different things to cover. Dressed animals are popular, whether Easter or not Easter. But on the upper left, we have some chickens and a household scene. And on the right, we've got a bunny rabbit, running along like a person with a guitar and a hat and a sport coat. The one on the lower left, not a dressed animal, but a bunny rabbit acting a lot like a human. That one also happens to be a Winch card, so I thought I would throw that one in. Decoration Day or Memorial Day to honor our veterans. The lower one is a tuck card printed in England, and these typically occurred in sets. Oftentimes the sets were of 6, 10, or 12 cards. The one above it isn't identified as a Memorial Day or a Decoration Day card, but I think it's pretty obvious that it is. I think that one was made in America. Now we have July 4th, and there are a lot of terrific July 4th cards. These were printed by Paul Finkenrath in Berlin, Germany. The artist was Bunnell, B-U-N-L, and you can see that the July 4th theme, the artist really went to town on Uncle Sam, and some nice artwork on July 4th cards. And again, a wide range of quality. And sometimes the July 4th cards and the other holidays as well. Some of the cards are just very generic, but it's not hard to seek out the better ones. Here's 4, and I think this is just a partial set, but I happened across these out of a collection that I purchased, and some nice themes, you know, Uncle Sam, the eagle, the shield, you know, maybe Lady Liberty, Liberty Bell, etc. Some fireworks. So, and this set, you can't see it here, but this is an embossed set, and a lot of those early holiday cards were nicely embossed, which kind of gives them a 3D effect and adds to these ones are embossed. I think so. Yeah, I recall that they are. Yeah. So that adds to the collectability, in my opinion. Here's some Halloween cards. That's a separate subject in itself, as any of these holidays can be. There are a lot of different ways to collect Halloween cards. An excellent book has been published, rather thorough, by some people in Minnesota. And I think it's still available. It's one of these books that you can buy and then they'll print a copy out for you. I happen to have one, and that's really a great book. It's a great guide for collecting Halloween cards. These are kind of just okay Halloween cards. Some of the really, there are some really expensive ones. Those might be the winch cards, where the artwork is just fabulous. There's nothing wrong with these. And I wanted to show these because the one is a jack-o'-lantern, there's a black cat. Then we got a witch on a moon. So there's different ways to collect Halloween. You know, if you wanted, if a person wanted to collect witches, they could collect Halloween witches. That would narrow the scope of the collection. Might make it easier to collect in some ways. Thanksgiving cards. Here again are 2 winch cards. This is kind of a homecoming thing, maybe up in Alaska or something. Yeah, in fact, it says first Thanksgiving Day in Alaska. The other one is Gold Seekers, California. And this is another set, and I don't know how many are in this set, but this is just 2 of that particular set. Some more John Winch cards. Pretty sure these are Schmucker. And I think I have another one that shows the same image but different printing, where these 2, for instance, there's only a few colors in this one. There's like kind of a light salmon or a pink color and some gold and then some gray and green printing for the ink. But these are quite nice cards, and they're subtle. They're embossed. Let's go on to the next one. Oh, we went to Christmas. Okay. I wanted to show another Thanksgiving one, but I didn't have time to show that. So let's go back to this other one. Imagine, if you will, the image on the left, and then forget about the one on the right. So if you were to take that image on the left, and then another card could be printed in multicolor. And some of the winches are that way, where these ones are just a few colors, but another one might have lots of red and blue and And I'm not sure why these were chosen to be printed with fewer colors, but that's kind of unusual for winch cards because they're usually more multicolored. Christmas cards, they're very popular. I'm going to include some Santa Clauses. There's lots of other things to collect with Christmas. Christmas children or snowmen. But here, these are 2 winch cards, and the one on the left, you can see Santa Claus in an airplane, kind of an uncommon theme, red suited Santa. The one on the right, this one again is one of the ones that's like a booklet. The booklet is kind of in the shape of the plants and the bell. You can open up that booklet and you can write a message on the card underneath. Circa 1910 or so, somewhere in that time, divided backs. Now another rather popular part of Christmas is hold to light Santa Clauses. I have one on the right. The card's damaged, but I want to show that there are such things as hold to light Santa Clauses. These are rare, or at least they're very expensive. And this is one that's out of my collection. I'm just happy to have that one because you will have a hard time finding hold to light Santa Clauses. And the one on the right is also hold to light. Hold that up to the light, the windows light up and the candles light up. And so an interesting, angel. Actually, I don't see a lot of angels on Christmas cards, but you see quite a few on Easter cards. So hold to light cards are one of the interesting things to collect. And here we have some more Santa Clauses. The one on the left is by HBG, which is, the name is Griggs, and the Griggs is the artist, and you can see a very Merry Christmas on the bottom, and that's very typical of the HBG cards, that style of writing. HBG covered a lot of different holidays and also cards that weren't holidays. They just have sayings on them. But the artwork's fairly interesting. Some of the paper quality, I think, on the HBG cards wasn't as good because sometimes we find the HBG cards tend to be defective. But they can be found that aren't defective. But I think the paper quality of the printing on those might have been a little bit lower. The center one, I think that's a Hungarian card. And here we have like a St. Nicholas or a Santa Claus, a tan suit, kind of a different kind of Santa Claus. There's really a lot of different portrayals of Santa Claus or St. Nicholas from the European Christmas cards. And on the right, we have an Ellen Clapsaddle signed card. Ellen Clapsaddle is a well-known American artist. I believe she's American anyhow. Did a lot of holidays, a lot of Valentine's, a lot of holiday stuff. And here's one of her cards showing some couple of children at Christmas time. She had a lot of nice work too. Now I kind of want to switch gears again. So I hope you're getting a feel of the dating of the cards, because that's part of the purpose of my talk. But let's get into transportation cards. And here we're going to have some real photo cards as well. A lot of people like collecting the transportation cards. Trains are very popular, planes, lighter than aircraft, automobiles, horse-drawn, carts, et cetera, ships. And also with the Zeppelins and the ships, the philatelic interest, collecting the postmarks, as some of those can be quite valuable and can be found. Sometimes the seller might not know the postmark, is a good postmark. On the left here, we have the Parseval 1. This was a German airship. There was a series of 22 of these made. This was Parseval 1. I happen to know that because of the 1909 postmark. There was a prototype to Parseval, and I think I had read in one of my research things I was doing for the talk that the Parseval 1 was actually built in part out of the prototype, the one that came before Parseval 1. On the right, there's a French dirigible. It's kind of hard to make it out, but I wanted to include this one because it has an aviation meet postmark, Bethany Aviation, and I think that was 1909. Quite a variety of the lighter than air, and not all Zeppelins. These are obviously dirigibles, but these can be found in dealers' inventories without a lot of difficulty, and they're pretty interesting, I guess. Here's a couple of Zeppelin postcards. There's one of the early Zeppelins, not sure which one that is. I don't know if that can be seen. That's maybe ZR1, I'm not sure. Graf Zeppelin there at the lower right. That's a divided back postcard, as is the one underneath it. ILA, that's the International Luftschifffahrt Ausstellung, which is an aviation exposition. It was held in Frankfurt in 1909. So that's an example of poster art. It's another thing that can be collected for people who are collecting postcards. And that particular card, if you can find it with the associated postmark, is a kind of a rare, valuable postmark. But this particular example is unused. Now, here was something I ran across recently in my collection, was rather excited about. Real photo postcard of a young aviatrix, Blanche Scott. And this happened to be when she was out at the Oakland San Francisco Aviation Meet, February 1912. Quite an added benefit with this one. Has the airplane station cancellation with it. It's pretty expensive, or at least rare cancellation. And Blanche was an amazing woman. She was taught by Glenn Curtis, the only woman to have been taught to be an aviator by him. That was in 1910. She's accredited as being the first United States woman to pilot an airplane. It was kind of by accident. She was taxiing or something along a field and put the throttle into high gear, I guess, and did fly for a short while. But I was looking on the internet, and another source credited somebody else with being the first woman pilot in the United States, but I think Blanche actually wins that one. And she was a stunt pilot. She was known as the tomboy of the air. She did some pretty dangerous stuff. She also made quite a bit of money. I read that she was making up to $5,000 a week back then, which is pretty good, even today. Also, she was the first Glenn Martin woman test pilot. Martin, is known as part of the Martin Marietta and later Lockheed Company. And she was a test pilot for Glenn Martin. And another one of her interesting accomplishments is she was the first woman to drive across country from east to west in 1910. She did so in about 2 months and 1 week. She did so with a woman reporter, and that was back when There was 218 miles of paved roads in the United States. So that's quite a feat. So she's quite an amazing lady. Now, speaking of Glenn Curtis, I guess he had his airplane company at Hammondsport, New York, at the south end of Lake Keuka. He created the Jenny, and of course, famous for postal collectors, the inverted Jenny postage stamp. This is a picture, a real photo of one of his planes. This preceded the Jenny by several iterations. So this was one of his early airplanes taken at Hammondsport, New York. Lincoln Beechey on the right. Here's a real photograph of Lincoln Beechey. He was also a stunt aviator, and he did some amazing stunts. I think he was known for having invented the free fall, flying up vertically until he ran out of gas, and then coming out of it and landing. And he did so, okay? And he did some other things too, like I think maybe he invented the inverted roll. Anyhow, he had some pretty amazing stunts that he invented. And but at the 1914 World's Fair, I guess that would be the Pan Pacific one in San Francisco, he made a little mistake, I guess, and plummeted into San Francisco Bay or the water near there. And they recovered him soon after, but he drowned. So I guess it's kind of dangerous being a stunt aviator. But anyhow, that's one of my postcards. I don't have much to say about these two, but they're important, at least because here we're getting into a time when commercial aviation is coming to the forefront. Here's the China Clipper at top. And the China Clipper cards can be found at postcard shows and stamp shows. This happens to be a real photo. A lot of mail was sent, of course, by the China Clippers. And then the one beneath it, that was a DC-6. And it was signed, I think that was signed by the pilot. I don't have a picture of the reverse of that one, but it was a first flight postcard. And I think it was, I think I recall either Chilean or Venezuelan stamps on that. And I kind of regret not having that one to show you because it has a colorful reverse, some multicolored postage stamps on it. And then another linen postcard of the China Clipper. Here again, this is a linen postcard from the 1930s or so. The lower right corner, perhaps you can make out the first two letters there. I think it might be a 9A or something. That was produced by Kurt Teich, a well-known publisher of cards. And although I can't see those two, the number and the letter following it, that tells you the year that that card was published. And for instance, if it says 9A, that would be 1939. 9 is for 9 and A is for the 1930s. And I can't see it from here because the image is too small. But that's how one way to date a postcard. It's a Kurt Teich linen. And beneath it is a picture of an airport. And I like that one because you can see the props on the prop jets turning. And this is an example of a chrome postcard. I'm not going to show a lot of chrome postcards, but I wanted to show a few. And that's kind of an interesting chrome postcard. So I wanted to throw that one in to show that. Now here we'll have a couple of automobile cards. Both of these are kind of advertising cards. The first one on the left, a Buick Coupe, a model 21-46, checking in at Portland, left San Francisco January 7th at 4:22 p.m. and arrived in Portland January 8th at 9:38 p.m. So it was like a 29-hour drive from San Francisco to Portland. Pretty amazing feat back then. That was in the early 1920s, I guess, 1921 maybe. 750 miles. So that could serve as an advertising, what a great transformation was going on in the country at the time. And you can see the automobile, the Buick dealership in the back. And on the right, a much more modern one. I don't know cars that well. I would guess that might be from the late 1940s. That's a chrome postcard. And a lot of automobile advertising. And these are fairly abundant today at shows, especially if they're from, let's say, the 1970s or so. This is a little bit earlier. So a lot of good material out there to be found with automobile advertising postcards. Moving on to trains. Railroads could use postcards as an advertising medium. These are both linen postcards. The one on the left, Chicago and Northwestern, Streamliner 400, somewhere in the vicinity here in the upper Midwest. And the one on the right, that was a Santa Fe railroad car interior. And that's kind of done in a Southwestern theme. That was the Super Chief. And that's a Fred Harvey postcard. That's another type of topic that people collect. Fred Harvey, of course, had a lot of places out west, or maybe they even, I think, in Illinois too. But going out west, a lot of Fred Harvey stops on the various train stops way out west. So they used the beautiful scenery out west to advertise their company. A lot of Grand Canyon postcards, a lot of other stuff. And that's, I found that there are a lot of people collecting Fred Harvey. So another way to collect postcards. A very short amount of time is going to be spent on ship postcards. This is a huge field. And, quite a bit of time could be spent on ship postcards. The one on the left here is an advertising postcard. It's an undivided back. Perhaps it's even a Pioneer. American line, New York and Southampton. So it was going across the Atlantic. Smaller size than the 3.5 by 5.5. Maybe this one was 3.25 inches tall. And the one on the right, a steamship postcard on the East Coast of the United States. And it kind of shows, wow, I could go on this nice, cruise on a steamship. So that's, a way to advertise their company. And there's a lot of interest in Great Lakes steamships. A lot of people here in the Midwest are collecting the Great Lakes steamships, and there's quite a variety to be had. Now we're going to talk a little bit about real photo postcards. This is an area that I'm pretty active in. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. I'm going to show you a book here. This is the Real Photo Postcard Guide. I don't think the Zoom meeting is going to get this, but it's a great volume, hardbound. It's by Robert Bogdan and Todd Wesselow of New York. And they've done a great job about studying real photo postcards. And one of the things I particularly like about their book is in the appendix. I think it's appendix number 2. You can look at the stamp box and how what it says on the back with postcard and various things. And you can date the postcard to within a certain number of years. It's quite useful for people who collect real photo postcards. I implore you to get the book. You can get it for $30 to $35 on Amazon. It's really a great book. The appendix alone is worth having. So in the early 1900s, Eastman Kodak and a few other companies, and some of those were acquired by Eastman Kodak, produced a lot of photographic paper, and they had the sense to advertise postcards as a hobby for people, to produce their own postcards. So I don't know how to describe this, but they helped develop the real photo postcard hobby. Let's put it that way. Like I said, many of the brands of the different papers can be identified by the backs of the postcards or the stamp boxes. Velox was one of the real early ones, and they became acquired by Eastman Kodak. AZO, that's a Kodak brand. And Cruxo and Psycho are two more. Those are produced by different companies. Don't know if they still produce cards. I doubt it. And as I said, the stamp boxes can help date the age. They're real photo postcards are quite popular now. A lot of people collecting them. And as I recommended the book, it's a great book to have. A.J. Kingsbury of Anago, well-known photographer. One of his subjects was the Native Americans of northern Wisconsin. I happen to like his photography. He has some Native Americans and just, nice poses, with snowshoes and doing things that they would be doing at that time, the way that they lived. You can see their wigwam in the background or their primitive housing. So he's got a lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff other than Native Americans, a lot of cities, like Anago, Wisconsin, for instance, and other cities in northern Wisconsin. Also, a lot of the early lodges up north in northern Wisconsin. I think I have another one coming up. Good photographer to collect, and you can usually see his name on the postcard. Now we're going to spend just a short amount of time on Wisconsin real photo postcards. I thought it would be fitting for the theme of the show to have a bunch of Wisconsin cards. 1908, Cassville, which is over on the Mississippi River in southwestern Wisconsin, an old ferry, and bringing across some horse-drawn carts, I guess. I don't know how that was powered. Maybe it was even powered by the horses. That's a pretty early one, 1908. Now the one on the right, I'd mentioned the stamp box. This one has an EKC stamp box. That's for Eastman Kodak Company. That dates it to the 1940s. And this one was at the Merrimack Ferry across the Wisconsin River. Still a really pretty interesting card because it shows how relatively primitive the ferries were even back in the 1940s. Now, we have to mention Colby. Colby is sometimes thought of as the postcard king of real photo postcards in Wisconsin. Prolific producer of postcards. He was also the photographer. Don't know if he hired other people as photographers, but he is known as the photographer. On the left, you can see the logo of his company, NPC, that's Northern Photo Company, Wausau, Wisconsin. And this is an example of one of the backs of his cards. Some of his other cards don't have that back, but that is definitely his. The images of a school classroom. The one on the right is a picture in Wausau. But he did a lot of great stuff up in northern Wisconsin. And some stuff in southern Wisconsin. I think even in northern Illinois, he had some things don't know about other states. Here's a picture of his studio. This is not a postcard, but it's in the same format as a postcard, just doesn't have the postcard back. So I assume he probably sent this out as advertising or as a way to procure customers and also to advertise his store in Wausau. There's a stain on the right, unfortunately, but it's still a nice image of his shop. Moving around to different parts of the state, Beaver Dam Affair, saloon interior, John Walter and Company brewery cases at the lower right. Maybe this was a saloon in Eau Claire. And at the left, Fifield up in northern Wisconsin, train depot with some people waiting at the station. Train depots are particularly popular, real photo collectible around the country. And then again, another Kingsbury photo, Long Lake Lodge at Phelps, an old log lodge in northern Wisconsin. Well, we have to talk about Milwaukee since we're at the Milcopex stamp show. And the first card at the left is really a nice example of what you can find in real photo postcards. You can see all the signs on this company and somebody at work, you know, standing by the front door and the sacks of flour or whatever it is that they got there. Some signs about the state fair, a lot of great detail. And some of the people who made these photographic postcards really went to a lot of trouble to get the focus right. So there's a lot of credit due for the people who did the photographing. And on the right, we have a trolley of National Avenue trolley car. And it really helps if you have a trolley car, real photo, if you can identify the city where it's from, because that will help establish how valuable it is. A really neat card on the left, the Ed Gronkowski Band. Just found this one recently in a collection of mine. A very interesting card, kind of like a neighborhood band, I guess. And on the right, a saloon interior, postmarked Milwaukee, 1915, probably from Milwaukee, not really sure, but likely. And then on the left, we have Milwaukee Welding Company, and probably a shopkeeper or maybe the welder's wife, maybe tended the shop. Pretty nice detail there. On the right, a picture of the Milwaukee Braves. Didn't have time to check if Hank Aaron is in there, but it's another example of what you can find collecting postcards. Well, the one on the left is a repeat. Sorry, I didn't know I had two of those in there. I just wanted to show a leather postcard that's also of the Wells Building. Leather was fairly common material used to make postcards. Sometimes these were stitched together to make pillows, to make pillowcases. And you can occasionally find these, bunch of them stitched together, and they were big enough to cover a pillow. And people did that. And this also gives me the opportunity to tell you that other materials were used to make postcards. There's a number of aluminum postcards that had images printed on them. Wood was fairly common. Wood veneer, some nice cards from Japan printed on wood veneer. Copper postcards, those you can find. I even have a copper card that's a solid copper plate and a penny soldered onto it. And that's a pretty neat one. Didn't get a chance to show that one, but very rather unusual. Now here's another couple of Milwaukee postcards to finish up Milwaukee. Mail service card. Here, this one again is from around 1910 or so. And then a linen card on the right. Both of these, I guess, are divided back, I think. I'm sure the one on the right is Milwaukee County Stadium. That one was quite a while ago. But anyhow, and I also have one around the 1910 era of a Milwaukee baseball park. I didn't have, but I'm unable to show it today. Now, another topic that we can talk about is people collecting topical real photos. And that could be just about anything. But I happened to show these two. This was a couple of guys that decided to go over Niagara Falls. And the guy on the left, Bobby Leach, he survived the trip, but had some serious damage done to him, but he did survive. And then the one on the right, somebody named Strathakis or Strathakis, 1930. It was a fatal attempt, and the guy on the that you see in the picture was somebody named Red Hill, I think. He was a well-known Niagara River boatman that plied the area beneath the falls, and he was known as being somebody who could really get around because I think he was maybe even involved in helping Bobby Leach get out. But there was some reference on the internet about his being a well-known riverman, and the caption on the photo shows that the only thing that survived in the barrel was a turtle. Well, so much for that. Another topical real photo, tin workers. There are a lot of interesting occupations that you can come across on real photos. Again, people who collect them probably prefer them if they're identified, maybe not. On the right, we have the Kodak girls, and this gets back to the point that I was telling you about before, about Kodak company had the prescience to, promote amateurs producing their own photographs. And particularly, they did target women because I guess they figured women maybe had the time to do it for whatever reason. But anyhow, here's a picture of two Kodak girls taking pictures somewhere. So that's an important part of collecting. A very short amount of time is going to be spent on worldwide postcards before we finish up the talk. Here we have a China postcard, and before the Universal Postal Union, various post offices, like Germany and United States and Great Britain, they would have post offices in other countries. And here's an example of a Chinese postcard, but the stamp is like a German stamp, overprinted China. And so you can find these, a lot of different variations here. And this also is an example of the TCV. It's French. I can't pronounce it. But anyhow, it means stamp on the front. And it was kind of a fad, I guess. But there's a lot of interesting ones out there that have the TCV, the stamp on the front. And on the right, this one's kind of unusual. This is an expedition postcard. There aren't too many of these, and this is not a postage stamp. It's kind of like a private label. But an expedition team was out researching or exploring this vast glacial field. I guess it's one of the biggest ones in the world, in Pakistan. And then the postcard was then taken by a person, and the runner ran something like 80 or 90 miles to the nearest post office. That's what it says on the back of the card. And then it got posted, and this particular one was sent to India. So that's rather unusual. And another one, this is kind of interesting. See this once in a while. Back in the day when Germany and Russia and Austro-Hungary shared a common border, that would be Poland today for Austro-Hungary. Somebody got the idea of getting stamps from each of these three countries and posting them from the three different post offices. And it looks like maybe it was sent to Germany as well. Just kind of an unusual, colorful thing to do with postage stamps back then. Oh, and then a brief mention of worldwide exposition postcards. Well, you know that Germany made some great postcards in the 1890s. And not only did they do that, but they had a lot of expositions in the 1890s. And some of these were like in the 1897, 1896 era. I think this one's a 1896, maybe. Can't really see it right now. It's not a full color one, but there's a German exposition cancel on there. One of the horizontal lines says Ausstellung. That's German for exposition. These are not common, but I happen to like searching for them. And then the one on the lower left, that's the Universal Exposition in Paris, 1900. And on the right is a postmark of the exposition. I think that just about maybe wraps it up. Let's see if there's another one. Okay. Oh, I think this is the last slide. Another one of the 1900 Paris exposition. This is another example of how high quality the printing got at that time. Just fabulous printing. And then another card that I like a lot, in 1908, the Great White Fleet from the United States ran around the world, visited Japan, and there was a commemorative postmark. And these are, I think, there's two variations, maybe more. One of them is Tokyo and one of them is Yokohama. That's the Great White Fleet cancellation in Japan. I think that wraps up my talk. Thank you for attending. I really appreciate being able to give the talk. Oh, wait, one more. Large letter linens. Can't forget these. They're very popular. It's a linen postcard. A lot of people are collecting these. I put this one in late last night, so it's not really in order. But also, I wanted to mention that Amarillo is on Route 66, and there's a lot of Route 66 collectors. So that I can put in a plug for Route 66 collecting. Thank you.